You're watching the KGP Pregame Show, live from the KGP Studios in downtown Cambridge, Ohio. Your source for the latest local sports highlights, interviews, and information. Brought to you by And now, let's go live to the guys in the studio.
Hello and welcome to the KGP Studios here in beautiful downtown Cambridge for this week's edition of the KGP Pregame Show for Caleb Graham. Our producing the show tonight, I'm merely Tom Strasser, joined as always by my other sidekick, D-Train, Darren McCullough, and Train.
Somebody's supposed to be there. Didn't we see him just a little bit ago?
Caleb?
I think he's in makeup.
Makeup still?
Up there.
Oh. Been in makeup, sorry. They were working hard on me tonight.
Wow. You have?
Yeah, been in makeup.
I tell you what.
Who's our makeup guy?
Yeah. Maybe looking
job.
for a new profession, yes.
But Hammer and Heath Dawson joining us as
The
well.
microphone. They can do my makeup, but not the mic for me, so we'll get her here, folks, in a second, maybe. There we go. Now we're ready.
All right, then, fellas, 8 weeks into the high school football season, a couple rounds of the playoffs, and for our three local teams, one team was able to advance, the other two eliminated, but have games this week, and we'll get into that. But before we do, as always, we would like to thank our sponsors of the KGP Pregame Show. That would be Buffalo Wild Wings, Cons, Muskingum Valley Health Centers, John Valentine Insurance Agency, Simple Windows and Doors, and Basic Systems. When you visit their businesses, please be sure to thank them for sponsoring our KGP Pregame Show every week during the high school football season. We couldn't do it without them. And fellas, before we look ahead to week 9 and also round 3 of the playoffs, we'll look back coming up pretty soon. And with Cambridge, tough loss at Heath, and Buckeye Trail losing to Afrocentric on the road in overtime, a game Buckeye Trail led virtually the entire game. But the Nubians were able to pull it out in overtime, and Meadowbrook getting a big win. We have an action-packed show, and I'll tell you what, we'll take a timeout, and when we come back, we'll look at the Cambridge Bobcats and their playoff game with the Heath Bulldogs after this timeout. Welcome back to the KGP Studios. Heath Dawson, merely Tom Strasser, and D-Train here for this week's edition of the KGP Pregame Show. And fellas, last week we was truly honored to be joined by the head coach of the Cambridge Bobcats, head coach Ray Leake, and we were able to bask in their big victory over Lyndon McKinley in round 1 of the OHSAA high school football playoffs. But when we talked to Coach Leake, we knew they had a big hurdle to climb, and that was when they traveled to Heath to take on the Bulldogs. And Train, I guess anytime you take on anyone named Heath, you know you're going to have your hands full, and the Bobcats had that falling behind early and just never really could get it going.
Yeah, and there was 11 Heaths on the field at one time, so that's just miraculous. And
wow, and we know how tough it is just
dealing with one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the coach never quit talking. If he was anything like me, they were still be in that locker room doing a pregame speech. But
we digress. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, it kind of just, I mean, it was kind of the old saying that anything that could go wrong did, and that's exactly what happened Saturday night for Cambridge. I mean, obviously some key players getting banged up, Moore missed all the second half. I think he got hurt the second quarter. Penalties, Cambridge had 8 penalties for 75 yards. Turnovers was crucial. They had 6 turnovers in the game, including 2 of them going back for pick sixes. So, I mean, just losing possession of the ball and just anything and everything could go wrong. And I mean, it stinks. That's how you get eliminated from the playoffs. But I mean, they get an opportunity to play Friday night against Marietta. So hopefully their kids have are licking their chops and they're ready to go Friday night against Marietta, kind of get that sour taste down their mouth.
And Heath, when you look at the Cats, we know early when they played New Philly, they turned it over, I believe, 4 times, which, they lost a chance to stay in the game with that. But 6 turnovers. Turnovers really hasn't been a bugaboo for the Cats.
No.
But give Heath credit. They forced them, and they took advantage of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's like Train said, 2 pick sixes. I mean, we haven't seen that out of Cambridge's offense this year, other than the New Philly game. But, when you're facing a team that's 6-1 coming in, high-powered, have a good rating and ranking in the playoffs there, you can't turn the football over against a good football team like that. And if you really would look at it, you take away those pick sixes, and a few of the other turnovers, maybe things are a little bit different. But, when you're losing, sophomore quarterback Caden Moore, even though had an uncharacteristic game, what can we say about him? He's been stellar this year, especially for a sophomore. Logan Mobilini, man, he tried to fight to get back and, just wasn't able to go like himself. You can combine the turnovers, the injuries, and especially, if it's just a regular season ball game, it's bad enough. But when you're playing a team like Heath, and then you put the playoffs on the line, it just compounds things. So it just a tough go. As Train said, anything that could go wrong, it did.
And Train, Coach Lee talked about, he knew the Cats were going to be, an underdog, but Cambridge has been an underdog in a lot of their games, and they relish that opportunity. You get Mobilini back, and, that's a big lift, but then the injuries, set in, and when you lose your starting quarterback, a guy who has won our Buffalo Wild Wings KGP Player of the Week 3 times this season. He's had an outstanding year, Caden Moore. But give Heath credit. They were able to jump some routes and make the Bobcats pay.
Yeah, you have to give them all the credit in the world. And on their side of the field, their starting quarterback didn't start the game because he was dinged up. So they had a freshman starting at QB, but the kid that we talked about with Coach Leak last week, Xavier Purier, had a whale of a game. He set a career high with 318 yards rushing. So obviously he backed up his 6 touchdowns in one game earlier this year with a good performance Saturday night. And I mean, unfortunately, when Moore went down, Whaley came in, and Coach Leak said to himself, with Whaley, we kind of turn into more of a running team. We're more run-oriented, but when you're in a big hole, you kind of have to, the running game goes out the window and you got to pass a little bit more than you want to. And unfortunately, that led to the result of the uptick in the turnovers.
And Heath, Cambridge, most of the year, even in some of their tough losses, they've been able to regroup early after falling behind. But this night, they just were not able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're going to the game, your game plan is that Caden is going to be your quarterback. So when you lose him and you don't have him for the second half and you're already behind, let's not take any away from Heath. They played a good ball game, but Cambridge is trying to do some things that they're not used to doing, as Train alluded to. Again, though, credit to Whaley, he did have 142 yards passing. And he had 17 carries for 48 yards and had a TD. So, I mean, Caden did his best job in relief effort. But,
also also 3 catches, 40 yards.
Yeah, and
So
3
he
catches
kinda-
for 40 yards.
He was kind of like all over the place on the stat column.
Right. It's like you playing one-on-one, two-hand touch in the front yard back in the day, you know what I mean? But anyways, it's just, Cambridge was behind the 8 ball with what they were up against. And like you say, uncharacteristic things that they had to be faced into with losing Caden. And I talked to Sean Moblini, Logan's dad, and they were amped that he was coming back. But when you look and when you say that Logan, if you would say that Logan's going to go into that game and have 4 carries for 14 yards, you're probably thinking, uh-oh. So, and that just was, Cambridge just forced into doing things that they're not usually forced into. And you know what? They probably are a little bit uncomfortable with the situations, especially knowing that Heath is very good. So.
Yeah. And Train, you look at Cambridge, you look at the other side of the ball defensively. They've played an outstanding schedule, quite a few ranked teams, and they've kind of held their own as far as stopping the run, with the exception of Lima.
Yeah, and New Philly.
Yeah, but not since Lima has anyone really ran the ball like they seen Saturday night.
Yeah, and that's just the tip of the hat to pure year from Heath, an obvious stud. When I don't care who you are, if you put up 300 yards rushing in a game, you're pretty stinking good, in my opinion. I mean, I don't care if you're playing the worst team in the state of Ohio or the best team in the state of Ohio. Still, to put up those numbers is impressive, and you have to just tip your hat to him.
Well, especially, though, when you look at Cambridge's linebackers.
Yeah, and that's a good group.
I mean, you got Cambridge's linebacking crew, spearheaded by Justin Bartlett. Cambridge's linebackers aren't just some, average run-of-the-mill players. They're good ball players. And when you're putting up 318 yards rushing against that makes, to me, it's even more impressive. I had to go back and double-check that to make sure that was right, and you confirmed it. So, career high for him. So, I mean, sure that he was really excited and his family there for having such a good game. But, I mean, to do that against Cambridge's linebacking core, to me, that was very impressive.
So you look at the team rushing stats for Heath, outstanding, but still Cambridge defensively, Heath individually, a couple of outstanding performances nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I just mentioned Bartlett. Bartlett had 7 solo tackles, including 5 for a loss. So I don't know if it was on Perrier, but he had 5 tackles for a loss. And then Hayden Burris-Jones had a nice solid game, 8 solo tackles and 1 for a loss. So, I mean, you had a couple guys do some nice things, but I mean, when Perrier is carrying it 29 times, and then you had their freshman quarterback Brandon Bales also running some. I mean, they had some opportunities, but you had those two that really on the defensive side shined. And I mean, I don't expect anything less out of Bartlett. He's just been a good player there for Cambridge.
Yeah, and Train again, 2020, a year like no other. With any other year, you make the playoffs. Wow, what a great season. And if you lose, you're done. Only one team wins their last game, and that's the team who wins the state championship. But it's 2020. Everybody knew going in after week 6, you had the opportunity to participate in the playoffs, which Cambridge, of course, did. They got a playoff win, and you lose, but you still look up, and you've got 2 games left on your schedule, and you have an opportunity to finish with a winning record. They're sitting at 4-4, and win your last 2 games. And I'm sure they'll be ready to go Friday night when they take on a familiar foe.
An old ECOL rival, the Marietta Tigers. So Marietta's coming in 2-6, and they're going to play down at the college. So if you've never been to the college, the people that get to go, you'll see the new turf they got in there. It's like a grayish turf. Definitely really not really something that you see at every stadium, kind of like the Boise State blue turf, only theirs is kind of more of a grayish color to fit the Marietta Pioneers colors. But Marietta's led by their quarterback, Reese Gerber. They got another solid running back in Zach Bartlett that's pretty much turns down 100 yards each game, and then their top receivers, Tony Munoz. So it's definitely going to be another formidable offense that Cambridge's defense is going to have to go up against, and I think that's been the story all year, that they've been best offenses around.
And Heath, if you lose your quarterback and know,
Right.
or I don't, if he's going to be available. If Caden's not available, at least it gives the offense a week to prepare without him. But it's definitely going to be adjusting your game plan to what we have seen.
Right. And, one of the things, though, Caden Moore's been awesome, but let's look at the other side. You have Caden Whaley able to step in. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of high school programs that love to have Whaley starting for them. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good problem, at least for Cambridge to have, is that, hey, we've got a guy that can step and also do some nice things for us. When we started the season, Train had made the fact that there might be some 2-quarterback system going on. It just Caden Moore just shined so much, from day one. But it is going to be, like you say, Tom, an adjustment period, and maybe we'll see some new wrinkles. We don't know if Logan's going to be back as well. So we don't know. But if we know anything about Coach Leak, he is a competitor. You've had him on the show, and this, even though they're out of the playoffs, I'd almost say that going down to Marietta, he's going to treat it like it's a playoff game because, they win that game, and then, we don't know what's going to happen with Meadowbrook, of course, but, they do have Meadowbrook at least on the schedule. Okay. So, that in Cambridge's mind, let's go down and take care of business with Marietta and hopefully get a crack at Meadowbrook. So there's still a lot to play for Cambridge. They win this game. Let's just say that they don't get a chance to play Meadowbrook. Winning this game and being 5-4 and having a winning season, to me, that would be huge for your first year and some of the things that they've had to deal with. I mean, to me, in the schedule they played, to have a winning season, that would be impressive in his first year there.
Yeah, and week 10, do we see the Guernsey County Super Bowl? Hopefully not.
Well,
because that means Meadowbrook wins. And advances, to the next round. But Cambridge, a lot of teams that are in the playoffs, half of them are going to lose this week, and a lot of people will be scrambling for games week 10. Right. So, we're confident Cambridge will be able
They'll play their 10 games.
to get another one in. But we want to wish the Bobcats best of luck as they travel to Marietta to take on the Tigers, old ECOL foe, and, made it to the second round of the playoffs. That's something to be proud of. It's been an outstanding season for the Bobcats, and let's see how they finish it out and if they can get some of their key cogs back for this Friday. And once again, you're watching the KGP pregame show, sponsored by Buffalo Wild Wings, Muskingum Valley Health Centers, Basic Systems, Simple Windows and Doors, John Valentine Insurance Agency, and Cons. We thank our sponsors, and we thank you for tuning in this week. And we're going to take a timeout, and when we come back, we'll look at what happened in Columbus when the Buckeye Trail Warriors took on Afrocentric in the second round of the playoffs. And do the Warriors have a big game and a rivalry game this week at Old Washington? We'll talk about that too when we come back on the KGP pregame show. Welcome back to the KGP studios here in beautiful downtown Cambridge for this week's edition of the KGP pregame show. Caleb Graham producing the show tonight. I'm merely Tom Strasser, hammering Heath Dawson and D-Train Darren McCullough. We talked to Cambridge Bobcats last segment, and now let's talk some Buckeye Trail Warriors who went into their game this past Saturday night in Columbus to take on Afrocentric Nubians. And D-Train, I'll start with you. The Warriors, some teams had gotten a bye in week 7. The Warriors got a unplanned bye. They won by forfeit when Mount Gilead could not participate. But their last game, regular season game against Newcomerstown, was canceled as well. So Trail traveled to Columbus and had not played in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I don't know what was more gut-wrenching for Coach Kearns and the Warriors, is not playing those 2 games prior, or the results of the game Saturday night. Just, I mean, you look at it on paper, and you just look at the stats. They outgained Afrocentric 270 to 172 total offense. They won in time of possession, roughly 29 minutes to 19 minutes. So, like, that's the recipe that Coach Kearns cooks up every week.
Yeah.
I mean, the unfortunate thing is the penalties was an issue. 13 penalties, 115 yards, but Afrocentric had 13 for 120. So it just gut-wrenching and heartbreaking is just the two things that I can think of is to kind of describe Saturday night's game against the Nubians.
And Heath, you go to the game and you actually see more flags than you did this past July 4th. Both teams combined for 26 penalties, 235 yards. And to piggyback off what Train said, again, you look at the stats, and when you look at that, you think Buckeye Trail won. Anytime you run the ball for 253 yards, and your opponent, they carry the ball 40 times for only 91 yards. You know, that's barely, just over 2 yards a carry. Trail just left shaking their heads, feeling like they let one get away.
Yeah, I mean, I can just envision a giant cauldron and Coach Kearns with the big chef hat on over there stirring the cauldron, and you say, we're going to dump in that we had the ball 11 more minutes than them. And then we limited that team to 172 yards of offense. Connor Pushcarriage, our great quarterback, had the game that he did. Our defense, had several standouts, and we're going to take the lead into the third quarter. I mean, you put all those ingredients into that recipe, and you would think that Coach Kearns was cooking up a masterpiece. But, when you look what happened, I mean, give credit to Afrocentric. I mean, they hung in there. And did Trail have a little bit of rust? We could sit and debate that all day long. I know Coach Kearns wouldn't want us to sit and use that as an excuse because, when he plays, it's time to play for 48 minutes. I just know him. But, credit to Afrocentric. They were able to come out of that second half especially. Remember, they had a big 65-yard kickoff return, and that kind of started the momentum shifting a little bit. So even though they might not have had the offense, they did have some big special plays that they were able to cook up on their own. And, then they go into overtime and did what they did. So, I mean, yeah, it's a like, as Train said, I mean, what can you label it other than heartbreaking and really kind of shocking, when you look at the stats.
And Train, nothing was just normal for the Warriors. We talked about the 2 weeks off before that, and then the Warriors, before their trip up there, were informed, hey, we don't have a locker room for you. You have to get dressed, before you get on the bus and drive an hour. So even with all of that, the Warriors led 6-0. Afrocentric tied it up. Warriors went up 14-6. Afrocentric tied it up. Warriors went up 22-14. And fellas, that's when I thought the Warriors, a stop, and they have it. Give the Nubians credit. They went down and tied it up, got the 2-point conversion, and then go to overtime. The Nubians had not led not 1 second this entire game, but then they get the score 28-22, and then they get the defensive stop to pull it out.
Yeah, and the kid that we talked about last week, Leon the Wrecking Ball Briggs, had that game-winning touchdown for him, and the people who got attend that game, they got to see what we were talking about when you see a 6-foot, 270-pound monster. I mean, absolute monster of a kid. If you can watch the YouTube highlights, you can see him, and he just is just, I mean, he makes Jerome Bettis look small. But, I mean, you've got to give Buckeye Trail credit because, obviously, like you said, the trip they had to be dressed and an over our trip to Afrocentric in Columbus. But, I mean, they had 6 sacks Saturday night, and it was a collective effort. You had Austin Payton with 2.5, Shane Smith at 1.5, Nick Burris, Colton Shepard, Logan Hinkle, and Dakota Milliken all had a half a sack. So that just showed they were able to kind of overcome that adversity and get a lot of pressure on Afrocentric and make them earn every little yard they got.
And Heath, Coach Kearns knew going in, when you watch film of Afrocentric, they had the perimeter players that were quicker, that were faster. 6'4", 6'5", and great speed. Their backfield extremely fast and quick. The Warriors knew to have a chance, which they did. They had to control the line of scrimmage, and for the majority of this game, the Warriors did just that.
Yeah, I mean, think about what Train just said. I mean, again, Train, you're making great points tonight. I mean, when you get 6 sacks, I mean, that says your defensive line.
Wait, what'd you say? He's
Great points.
Great points.
I know you're not used to hear that about yourself or anything.
Well, I started to say, well, thank you, but, compliment the Train as well.
But, yeah, I mean, when you're getting 6 sacks on the defensive
Pat
side.
myself on the back.
Right? I wanted to say that when you said Heath did a great job earlier during the Cage Bridge segment. I want to say thank you. But anyways, but get back on topic. When you're getting those sacks, that tells me that defensive line is getting the push. They're winning the war in the trenches. When Trail's holding that football forever, they're winning the battle. I mean, it's really a shock. When you go back to it, Trail did an awesome job of limiting their athletes. But sometimes there's only so long that you can hold a team down. They get coming right out of the half, the 65-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. I'm sure Coach Kearns was like sick to his stomach about that because that's just a lapse. You know what I mean? And then not being able to control the wrecking ball, as you called him. And they're going into overtime. It's just it's a shame that Trail. I think when you look at the stats defensively, offensively, whatever, I would say that Trail did the best job that they could have done up there as far as winning the battle physically. It's just the only place that they didn't have an edge was what that final scoreboard read. Yep. And that sometimes that's a game of football. Yep. And I know it's gonna be like a Caribbean sunburn. It's gonna sting a little bit for Coach Kearns and his team, but the good news is they still have more to play for this season.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that here in just a second. And fellas, Buckeye Trail going into the game. Last Wednesday, Franco Rome got his cast off his ankle, and that cat had every intentions of being on the football field Saturday night. And I'm thinking, Franco, impossible, with that. But he tried, couldn't go, and we'll see, about the last 2 weeks to close out the season. But Connor Pushkarich, you talking about a workhorse of a night for this outstanding senior for the Warriors. 41 carries, 229 yards. Just amazing. And I had a chance to see a picture of his ankle after the game. Ankles are not supposed to be swollen as big as his ankle was. It was stepped on a few times. When he was carrying it and just kept on pushing, with that ankle, but 229 yards. You run for 100, that's a good night. Right. You run for 200, that's special.
Well, I'm sure a good pre-Halloween gift for him would be a trip to the massage parlor because, work out those kinks because, man, what a load he carried the other night. I don't know if we want to call it a career game, but probably – all things considered, I would probably say it was a career game for Connor. We had him here earlier. Remember, we had him here and talked to him. And, the thing was, we knew going into this season what his abilities were. I mean, he just like Caden Moore at Cambridge. I mean, Connor was coming in. He was replacing somebody. And Hickman that had a stellar senior year last year. And Connor has lived up to the hype and the billing this year. And to me, I'm happy because from what I know of the young man, he's just a great kid, a good leader. And, to go into the playoffs like that and lead your team and almost will them to a victory, that says a lot about his ability and his talent.
And you said it right there, when a leader and willing his team to victory and putting the team on his back because, unfortunately, when Franco went down, Connor said, all right, guys, now it's time for me to lead you guys. And he has really stepped up, and it's been that guy, whether it's running the ball or hitting one of his receivers for a big play. So he's really showed what he could do these past 3 or 4 weeks without Franco.
And if I was a CEO of a company, that's the kind of guy I'd want working for me, as a guy that's going to step up and lead like that. So good job to Connor, and I know Coach Kearns and his staff have to be pleased with him.
Yeah, and the Warriors, a tough loss. They got a big game. And before we look now ahead one thing defensively, Aiden Snodgrass, 9.5 tackles.
Yeah.
And again, the Warriors, they did a lot of good things and had a chance against the Afrocentric, just fell short. But, that's the bad news, the tough news. The good news is the Warriors, who have only had 2 home games due to 2 cancellations, will get their 3rd one, good Lord willing, tomorrow night when the Shenandoah Zeps, a rivalry that when Trail went to the IVC, they lost the opportunity to play. Well, Shenandoah and Buckeye Trail get together. Shenandoah lost 41-38, a heartbreaker, the Cold Grove last week in the playoffs. But you don't think these 2 teams are going to be amped up tomorrow night when the Zeps come to Old Washington? It ought to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, Train, I don't know how many Zeps Warriors football games you got to cover when we were back at the Jeffersonian, but I know I can remember a few times I got to cover those games, and I remember when we were at the Gazette that year, both teams were undefeated going into that game, mid-season battle, and I remember that was one of the most hyped games of the season, no matter what division around here. So, I mean, they've had some battles over the years, and both teams have had some successes against each other. So, that's a game that, Tommy, I think, are you going to be there getting to call the game?
That is
Nice.
the plan. We're still
Good, and so I'm kind of, in a good way, jealous that you're going to get to see that battle because, when those 2 teams always got together, it was fun because, a lot of the families butted up against each other there down by the lake and stuff. So it's going to be some bragging rights. And even Shenandoah coming in, they're 4-3, so they've had a pretty decent season. So it's going to be neat to see what happens with that rivalry and kicking back up at least for one season.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that I like about that rivalry, you got Coach Kearns, former Buckeye Trail player. You got Coach Wells,
Right.
former
Good
Shenandoah player. So those guys, they live that rivalry. They can make that speech to these kids like, yeah, I know we don't play Shenandoah as much now as we did when. You want to talk about a rivalry where it was fierce and they wanted to beat each other, and that's the end of the story. Now kind of everybody's more friends on social media and everything, and buddy. But back when those 2 played, I guarantee there was a lot of hatred for the team in blue from the team in green, and there was a lot of hatred for the team in green from the team in blue.
Yeah, and a shout out to the Zeps when they were, getting this game as a, plan B option if you're out of the playoffs. That, there was thought the game originally was more than likely going to be played at Shenandoah, but when you looked at who had how many home games, Shenandoah was more than willing to come to Old Washington, knowing that Trails only had 2 home games. So
Very classy by Coach Wells and his staff.
That was nice of the administration and stuff there at Shenandoah. So it ought to be a lot of fun. The big question mark will be Franco Rome. Will he be out there for the opening kickoff? Guess you'll just have to tune in if you don't have a ticket to KGP TV tomorrow night on Facebook and YouTube to find out. But Shenandoah and Buckeye Trail, it's great that they're getting a chance to hook up against each other. It ought to be a lot of fun. And once again, we want to thank our fine sponsors, Buffalo Wild Wings, Cons, Muskingum Valley Health Centers, John Valentine Insurance Agency, Simple Windows and Doors, and Basic Systems for sponsoring this week's edition of the KGP pregame show. That's our Buckeye Trail Warrior segment. And now, when we come back, the still undefeated Meadowbrook Colts, not to give it away, but they will move on to round 3 of the playoffs. And they've got an opponent, and that opponent is coming to Byesville Saturday night. And we'll look at the Meadowbrook Colts' big victory over Philo last week and look ahead to their opponent, Gallia Academy. And we'll see what their challenges they will bring for the Meadowbrook Colts after this timeout on the KGP pregame show. Welcome back to the KGP studios for this week's edition of the KGP pregame show. I'm merely Tom Strasser, hammering Heath Dawson and D-Train Darren McCullough, hitting cleanup tonight for the team as we now look down at Byesville and the undefeated Meadowbrook Colts, who got a big victory over another MVL school, and that was the Philo Electrics. Fellas, these teams have met in scrimmage a few years. They met this year at the beginning of the year, the one and only scrimmage you were allowed to have, and they knew each other well. Both coaching staffs had a lot of respect for one another, expected a battle, and Meadowbrook got one, but the second half really was able to pull away, and Heath, another victory for the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, Train and I was able to cover the game for KGP, and I'll tell you what, I was impressed with Meadowbrook because, like Darren and I talked about, they went into the half, I mean, clinging to a 22-17 lead, and it felt like that they had done almost near everything right. I mean, they had played well, but Philo there, they were just hanging around. It was 22-10, and you felt like, I said a few times, it felt like that Coshocton game, that Meadowbrook had them on the ropes, almost ready for a standing 8 count. They were moving in for that 10, the knockout, and they just couldn't knock them out. But then you looked, to me, the difference in the game was, Meadowbrook comes out, stops Philo, stopped a fake punt. And Meadowbrook gets the ball back, and they weren't able to do anything with it themselves. Then Philo gets it back, and Brady McManaway deflects a punt. And so Meadowbrook took over with good field position. And from that point on, Meadowbrook scored on their next 3 straight possessions, which that Philo could only answer one time. And to me, that was the difference in the ball game right there.
And Train, you look like he said at the half, 22-17, but then in the third quarter, Meadowbrook outscores Philo 22-7. So Meadowbrook has 22 points in the first half. They get 22 in one quarter. The lead 44-24 going into the fourth. And then it was just a matter of holding serve those last 12 minutes.
And Heath made mention of the 2 of the big plays where the fake punt that Philo couldn't execute, the block that Brady McManaway got a piece of, and there was 2 other big plays that stands out. The kick return, Meadowbrook forces a fumble, Cale Flowers recovers it, so Meadowbrook's right back in business. They're used to recovering onside kicks. Well, it wasn't an onside kick, but they forced a fumble on special teams and got the ball right back. A big difference. And down in the red zone when Philo had the ball, Rhett Dyer came up with a couple big plays on 3rd and 4th down. He sacked Owen Smith, and then next play, he forced him to kind of throw it a little too soon. Those were kind of the plays that really stuck out and made a difference, and I'm pretty sure most, if not all of those plays happened in that third quarter that really turned the tide in Meadowbrook's favor.
And Heath, when you look at Philo and piggyback off Owen Smith, the outstanding quarterback, he threw for 161 yards and 1 touchdown, but Meadowbrook only allowed them to complete 44% of his passes. And again, the Meadowbrook secondary and the ability to put pressure on them did not give the Electrics a chance to really hurt them in the passing game.
And we talked about that, Train and I did, because there was one point where back-to-back plays, Webster makes a huge play, and then the very next play, Launder makes a huge play. And we both just said their secondary was just doing a nice job, covering guys. Now they did have a pretty good running attack on at certain points of the game, but Meadowbrook's secondary, to me, I thought they were very well polished. They played good assignment football. You had Todd and McCall both in the mix. I mean, they really played well in the secondary. I mean, I don't know that they could have played much better because, Philo was trying to get some deep balls and stuff, but there was just nothing there because Meadowbrook would have everything covered. So, I mean, I think secondary, especially that back-to-back series when Webster and Launder made 2 huge back-to-back plays.
And Train, we knew Philo was going to run the football. They had a bell cow themselves in the backfield, but Philo, 31 carries, 146 yards. They did get 3 touchdowns on the ground, 4.7 average, but Meadowbrook still, for the most for the most part, was able to slow down the running game.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who had the big first half for him was Casey Munyon. And Heath made the comparison to a high school version of Barry Sanders, because that kid, he was very shifty, and there wasn't too many times you were going to take him down behind the backfield. He finished 16 carries, 110 yards, and had all 3 of their touchdowns. But they kind of got away from that play, and I think he had 93 of those 110 yards at halftime.
Yes.
So Meadowbrook kind of started forcing them to be a little one-dimensional, and that's when Meadowbrook kind of penned their ears back and put pressure on Smith, and it caught up to him in that second half.
Yeah, and I made the point that I remember in the first half saying, I just don't remember a time where Meadowbrook, their front was not able to get a push the way they were in that game. Even in the Coshocton game, they were still getting a push, and it just felt like, I'm like, am I watching Meadowbrook get out physical in this game? And that's the way it seemed. But then once that second half hit, as he already mentioned, Dyer and McCullough and some of the other guys, A.J. George, some of those guys really started making some big plays and, opened things up for the secondary to make plays and stuff. So I felt like Meadowbrook, more than anything in that second half, their physical ability and their physical play really shined.
And you know what? When you talk about using the phrase one-dimensional, now let's go to Davis Singleton.
No.
You talking about a dual threat. Did he come up big, not only in the air but on the ground? 240 yards passing on 18 of 25 attempts, and again 72%. Passing. The percentage, just incredible, his completion percentage. And then on the ground, 28 carries, again, over 200 yards, 4 touchdowns, 7.8 yards a carry. So Singleton alone had about 459 yards total offense. Wow.
Yeah, and 6 total touchdowns, 5 2-point conversion passes. So, they did a great job. I think early on, the playbook kind of struggled. That first possession, they had a quick 3 and out. The second possession, they kind of had to work for everything, and it was un-Meadowbrook like, where we've seen him hit the big play and they have the touchdown. Well, I think it was a 12-play, 72-yard drive or something like that.
Yep.
And so they had to work, but then they kind of got into a groove where they were running sweep left, sweep right with Singleton. They would get Singleton outside the pocket with either Schwartz or Lacey being that lead blocker on passes. And Philo, give them credit. They did a great job of taking away Todd and McCall. Those guys did not beat him, but he found number 12, Brady McManaway, to be a pretty good target with his 7 catches, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 2-point conversions. So
don't forget about Hunter Eubanks also had a good game.
Yeah, they just showed. Yeah, those are our 2 big guns, but we also got these guys in the slot that can catch underneath and make plays.
And first, I want to apologize to Davis Singleton for not getting all his accolades in what he did last Saturday night, but we are on the tight time schedule, so it's time consuming saying everything that he did. So thanks, Train, for the assist there. But hey, I'll tell you what, give Philo credit. Just for the simple reason, going in, they said, hey, if Meadowbrook's going to beat us in the passing game and go up top, we're going to take Jerome Todd away, and we're going to take Jonah McCall. We're going to roll our coverages there and make someone else beat you. And Singleton said, thank you very much.
Right.
I'll go elsewhere. And McManaway and Eubanks made them pay.
Right. And that's the thing that we talk about. It's like, okay, go ahead and take Todd and McCall away. But Meadowbrook showed one thing to me in that game, that they're not just a couple trick ponies there. McManaway has really, as the season's gone, he has really developed into that quiet role as far as an offensive weapon. And then Hunter's been steady all season as well. I've seen Meadowbrook 3 different times now, and Hunter, every game, it seems like he does something big for him. So, when you have those guys, and then another thing that they kind of did that Philo impressed me, is Lacey. That's the quietest game I think we've heard from
He's
him
had in a while, yeah.
all year. So, I mean, but then you had Schwartz come in and get 60 yards on 12 carries. So, I mean, he's getting 5 yards a carry. So, I mean, Meadowbrook, you know, when you look at them, you know, you can sit and name, Singleton is the name, but when Todd and McCall also a couple, they're not just a couple. They're an entire offensive unit. And to me, if anything about that game spoke to me, it was the third quarter. I felt like the third quarter is a preview of what Meadowbrook is capable of because they had their offense rolling, they had their defense rolling, and they had their special teams stepping up big. If that's how Meadowbrook could put a game together, I can't see anybody beating them right now the way they played in that third quarter. I mean, it was just impressive.
Very well said. And sum it up and give, you know, the clip notes to everyone out there. Yes, Meadowbrook has a lot of dudes, that's for sure.
For sure.
And they do. And congratulations to Meadowbrook as they move to 7-0 on the season. That's your 2020 MVL champions. And after a bye week, boy, did they take advantage of that. And again, offense, defense, special teams. We talked with Coach Clendenning. When you think of explosive teams, you a lot of times you're talking about their offense, but Meadowbrook, they can score on defense and special teams. They've done it all year. So all three phases, they have things rolling. And congratulations to Coach Clendenning and his coaching staff. Meadowbrook is getting better and better each week. And fellas, another home game. You two will be there Saturday night, and the opponent is D-Train?
Gallia Academy, the 6-1, but I think Blue Devils, correct? Mm-hmm. And ironically, to piggyback on what Heath said, he said that third quarter was a sense of things to come for Meadowbrook. Well, ironically, the worst quarter, scoring by quarters, that Gallia has is the third quarter. They've outscored their opponents 225 to 138 on the year, but in the third quarter alone, they've been outscored 54 to 35.
Train, that is doing your homework, my man. That is a nugget, that's for sure. And so that is going to be huge coming out of the locker room for them. But, you know, we've talked about on this show some outstanding running backs, and I think they have one as well.
Yeah, with all apologies to Casey Munyon and every other running back that Meadowbrook's faced. I mean, you could throw the Coshocton kids in there, too. Big game James Armstrong, I think he might be the real deal. The dude has 1,000 yards rushing in 7 games. He's their number 2 receiver. He has a total of 19 total touchdowns, 14 rushing, 4 receiving, and return. So he's definitely, I've seen a little bit of film on him. He's definitely fast. Not the biggest kid, but he's well compact, built together. He can explode through the hole, and he's going to be a tough task for the Colts, for sure, on Saturday night.
Armstrong, a first-round draft pick in the high school fantasy football draft this fall as well. And,
2 slots behind Singleton, though. Let's be
exactly. But, you know, we see the challenges that they present Meadowbrook, but what are a couple of keys, Heath, going into this game that if Meadowbrook can do these few things, that the Cambridge-Meadowbrook game will not be happening week 10?
Well, one thing is to play like they did in the second half, especially against the run. You know, as Train alluded to earlier, Munyon he looked amazing in that first half. He would hit the pile and bounce out and stop on a dime and shift. I mean, he was impressive, but I tell you what, as good as he was, Meadowbrook was even better at stopping him in the second half. So when you're talking about big game James, Meadowbrook's defense, especially that second half defense, they just need to play and emulate the way they did. And for Singleton, you know, whether, when the RPO, he just made, to me, his first quarter, they got a little slow, off to a slow start. But I tell you what, his reads the other night, to me, he just went through. There was a time where he went right, went center, went back to left and made the touchdown pass. And it's like, to me, that's not things he was doing last year. He was starting to get to that point, but I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse because I said, to me, it's just his decision, whether it be to pull it down and run or make the pass or give his receivers a little bit more time. He just has made so many good progressions as last year and this season's going on. And I just think it's going to come down to Singleton. You know, can he do what he did this last Friday night and what he's done all season long? Just continue to let his line block for him and trust his team and his receivers. Because, I mean, I feel like if Meadowbrook can step up, that defensive line especially, and be more physical and stop that run game, I really see Meadowbrook advancing to the next round.
And Train, you look at the defense, Hunter Eubanks, 7 tackles. Eric McCullough had 6. Dyer had a sack. If they can contain Mr. Armstrong and make the Blue Devils go via the air and see what the passing game can be like.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Meadowbrook might have called an alumni to kind of play the James Armstrong role. They might have got a hold of Timmy Ferguson and say, hey, Timmy, you think you can kind of be a scout team quarterback for us? Because, I mean, as looking at the film, I think that's a good comparison for James Armstrong. Quick, shifty, can provide some power. And, I mean, if he's there, I think that's a great comp and a great way to prepare them for Saturday night.
If Timmy's not available, call Mr. Bladner. Maybe Cody Huff can come out of retirement. I mean, there's been a lot of good Meadowbrook running backs, that's for sure.
And I'll see if I've got some free time, as well. If Coach Clendenning needs me, I'm there for the Meadowbrook
Is your
Colts.
phone ringing right now?
That's for sure. Yes.
That's melting over here.
To stay away. I'm sure that's what they're saying. So, fellas, that'll be a big one this Saturday night. In Byesville. Galley Academy, the Blue Devils come in to take on your Meadowbrook Colts. KGP TV will be there, Facebook and YouTube. My partners in crime to bring you that game at 7 o'clock. Good luck to Meadowbrook.
And to add one final thing, in the regional quarters is what we're in now. A couple familiar teams in there. Heath is going to be taking on Licking Valley, who Heath obviously just beat Cambridge, and then Carrollton, who Cambridge played earlier, is 6-2. So, hats off to Cambridge there. 2 of the teams they played this year in the regional quarters. Carrollton 6-2 will take on Bloom Carroll, and then St. Clairsville, the Red Devils, back at it again, 7-0 will take on Warren. So,
and the number 1 seed, Red Devils.
The quarterfinals, and let's not forget who Heath is playing, Licking Valley. So there are some doozies in that regional quarters. I'm excited about it.
And like we mentioned, of those 8 teams, the only seed that's still not in there of the top seeds is the 6th seed. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7 and 8 all advanced. So there was no NCAA bracket upsets too much for the region.
Cinderellas here.
So Division 4 Region 15 didn't have the Cinderella of Kent State making the Elite 8
Region 15 is where it's at.
So it's all chalk all the way through, and that makes it a lot of fun. You love upsets, but you love to see the heavyweights there at the end. And this region has that. So thanks for joining us here for the KGP pregame show. When we come back, we will wrap things up and look back at Week 8 and give out our John Valentine Insurance Agency Defensive Player of the Week, as well as the Buffalo Wild Wings KGP Player of the Week, and also give you an update of what games you can see this weekend on our KGP networks. We'll take a timeout and be right back. Cut! All right.
6:39, perfect. 5 minutes and I can be out.
Yeah, we got that.
Okay, so let's look at defensive player.
Hey,
obviously Singleton's got to be it. I mean,
you mean a player? Not defensive. Player.
Doesn't Singleton have to be it?
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, push carriage.
Yeah, but push carriage is one that you'll mention.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, train
does it. Yeah,
I'd have to say,
and you'll mention McManaway.
McManaway has to be with 2 touchdowns.
I'm gonna mention Whaley too, just because he had
Whaley.
That'd be good. That'd be a couple good players to name outside of. That'd give you a Singleton plus 3 other mentions.
Yeah.
And then for defensive, I don't like. Cambridge had the.
I think we got to go with Payton. His
Who?
8 tackles, 7 solo, 4.5 for a loss, 2.5 sacks. Austin Payton from Trail.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I mean, when you got 7 solo tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 4.5 for loss, that's pretty good numbers.
But hey, you can mention Aiden Snodgrass. He had 9.5 tackles. And then the Cambridge had a...
Yeah, I'll mention the 2 Cambridge boys. And then what about Meadowbrook? Anybody?
Eubanks had 7 tackles.
Okay,
Eric McCullough had 6.
And he had a sack, too. Put that in there.
Eubanks,
give the kid some love.
Who did?
Eric had a sack.
Eric had a sack.
Did he? Okay,
Yeah.
on the...
So,
Hey, those Meadowbrook people don't give him enough love.
McCullough had 6 tackles and a sack.
This is the kid that's double and triple teamed every play.
He is, really. I mean, I'll give you credit. Your nephew's pretty darn good, man.
Oh, he's a freaking stud.
He's pretty good. He's pretty good. Is he a senior?
Yep.
They're probably not getting any kind of recruitment hardly because of the COVID crap. He could play at a D3 school.
Hey, see the solo sack, assisted sack? See right there?
He had one.
I'm
had
not saying
one.
he did, but I'm just going off there, and
By
that
theirs.
was red. Now see,
Because
they had
remember-
Thomas. He had one.
because it was now inside the 10 when he got him.
And then I
think.
said, "Oh, that's nephew
Yeah,
Eric making a big play."
Yeah, see Eric. They had him 1 solo, 5 assist.
I'll tell you what, he had a big game. He and Dyer.
Yeah.
Dyer was huge, man, in the second half. And McManaway was,
the first half's where Rhett had some trouble.
yeah, he struggled that first half.
Because
but
that's
then-
Munyon was beating him on his side.
Yeah, but then Dyer stepped up in that second half. He must have got a chewing at halftime because I tell you what, he was big in that second half. Meadowbrook's defense, honestly, their defense looked great.
Oh, it's 100 times better than it was last year.
Oh.
Jeez. They were getting roasted all last year.
Right. That secondary might be the best secondary Meadowbrook's ever had.
And Launder might be out this week, so I
Why?
heard. He got a concussion late in the game.
Oh, suit him up. Put him in a dark room for all week
So-
and let him play.
Schwartz played safety at the end, but
Every
it's hard
time
to
I
tell.
hear say, I triple dog dare you. Right? Schwartz. I got to throw that in there this week. Somebody tries to tackle him, I'm going to say, Schwartz just said, I triple dog dare you. You know what that's from, right? Huh? Do you? Tommy? The Christmas story.
The Christmas
When
story.
They stick their
Yeah,
tongue on
when
the
they stick
bowl,
the tongue.
his
Yes,
friend
that's right. I
Schwartz.
triple. Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying. Yes.
All righty, let's do it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to beautiful downtown Cambridge and the KGP studios as we wrap things up here on the KGP pregame show again. We want to thank our fine sponsors, Buffalo Wild Wings, Cons, Muskingum Valley Health Centers, John Valentine, Insurance Agency, Simple Windows and Doors, and Basic Systems for sponsoring not only this week's broadcast, but throughout our 2020 high school football season. Be sure to thank these sponsors and visit their businesses, please. And fellas, as we get ready to hand out our final awards and look back at week 8 of the high school football season, we want to look ahead and see what's on tap on our KGP networks. Starting Friday night, you can watch Eastern at River, Town Trinity at Bellsville. Now, the Bellsville game is a regular season game. The Eastern at River, that is a playoff game. And as well in Old Washington, Shenandoah at Buckeye Trail on our KGP network as well. And then possibly still waiting as we're here to find out, Malvern travels to Dalton, and that game could possibly be on. We was waiting to hear from them. So that would be a bonus game Friday night. And then Saturday, we have 2 games, Afrocentric at Fort Fry. That's the Apex. They are broadcasting that game on our KGP networks. So some people may be interested in that. And the big one Saturday night in Byesville, Gallia Academy Blue Devils travel to take on the undefeated Meadowbrook Colts. So we want to wish good luck to all the local teams, regardless of regular season or playoffs. Good luck to all. And now it's time to give away our John Valentine Insurance Agency Defensive Player of the Week for Week 8. And Heath, again, we had quite a few to pick from.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you look around the gridiron this past weekend on the local scene, you had several guys. I mean, look over to Cambridge, even though Cambridge had their playoff loss and their playoff dreams busted, they still had some good performances out of Hayden Burris-Jones, 8 tackles, 1 for a loss. Justin Bartlett, 7 tackles, 5 for a loss. So good job to those 2 Cambridge teammates defensively in the effort. And then you look over to Meadowbrook, you had Hunter Eubanks had 7 tackles. And then the Bloodline, 6 tackles and a big sack the other night. And Meadowbrook's a big win, 52-39 over Philo. So, or did I say 39? 52 to 37. I don't know why I said 39. But anyways, Meadowbrook's big win there. And then look over to Buckeye Trail. They had a trio of teammates. You had Aiden Snodgrass, 9.5, 9 solo, 2 for a loss. And then you had Shane Smith, who we didn't mention earlier, 5.5 tackles, 5 solo, a sack and a half, 1 tackle for a loss. But we're going to go with the Warrior teammate of those 2, Austin Payton. Had 7 solo tackles. He had 2.5 tackles and 4.5 for a loss. So good job to the trio of Warriors. But Austin, you are our Valentine Insurance Agency Defensive Player of the Week.
Yeah, congratulations to Austin Payton. 2.5 sacks. That's huge to go with his 8 tackles. So our this week's John Valentine Insurance Agency Defensive Player of the Week is Austin Payton of the Buckeye Trail Warriors. And now it's now the turn over and look to see who our winner is of the Buffalo Wild Wings KGP Player of the Week. And again, a lot of nominees that all of them well deserving to win this.
We got to first give a shout out to the signal callers. You got to throw Caden Whaley in there, a guy who probably hadn't taken but 10% of the reps since week 1, being thrown in there for the injury with Moore. 142 yards passing, 48 yards rushing, a rushing touchdown, 3 catches, 40 yards. So he just did a little bit of everything. He's kind of like a gadget player. Whatever it takes, he's going to be there to help the team.
And we did have a visit by Mr. Caden Moore, by the way, during a commercial break, who he says he'll be back this week. So just to plug back to him.
And then over Buckeye Trail, Connor Puscarriage, again, puts the Warriors on his back, 229 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. And then at Meadowbrook, the primary weapon, Brady McManaway, 7 catches, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 2-point conversion receptions. But obviously we have to go for winner when a guy has 459 yards total offense, 240 passing, 219 rushing, 6 total touchdowns, 4 rushing, 2 passing, 5 2-point conversions. I believe he carried the shoulder pad room and may have swept the locker room when everybody was done. Might have even be doing the laundry right now, preparation for this week's game. It's hard to tell. He did everything else Saturday night. So Davis Singleton is going to be the Buffalo Wild Wings winner of Player of the Week.
And he did that Saturday night, and he's been keeping the Blue Devil coaching staff awake at night this week leading into that big game. So congratulations to all our nominees, but our winner, the Buffalo Wild Wings KGP Player of the Week, goes to Davis Singleton. And again, good luck to Davis and Meadowbrook as they try to continue on that tournament trail this week. So, fellas, we want to wrap things up. Again, we want to thank Buffalo Wild Wings Cons, Muskingum Valley Health Centers, John Valentine Insurance Agency, Simple Windows and Doors, and Basic Systems for sponsoring our show, as well as Caleb Graham for doing a great job producing it. And Ethan, man, the makeup job you did on Heath, he's never, ever looked better.
Good thing he knows how to run a video camera.
Thanks.
So we want to thank you for joining us this week on the KGP pregame show, and we look forward to seeing you next week. And be sure to tune into our KGP networks tomorrow night, Friday, and Saturday night for some great high school football action. So on behalf of the KGP family, we want to wish everyone a great weekend, and please be safe.
You stay classy, Guernsey County.
You can count on me meeting you in the press box.
Good night, everyone.